Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Burney with Uncover Your Radiance Within, and I'm a health and life coach. And this week's talk is another health lesson. And last week was to get moving. So hopefully that motivated you to get moving, to get some more physical activity in your life. Cardiovascular is important, but so is strength training as well. So trying to vary up your activity and to get moving. And this week's topic is more nutrition based, and it's thinking about sugar. And all that sugar really isn't so sweet. It really is one of those things that I encourage you to look into and to try to decrease. And I'll give you some recommendations at the end. But when we talk about sugar and you think about health and wellness and disease, a disease that may come to mind is diabetes. I know it does for me. Diabetes does run in my family. So you think, okay, sugar, diabetes. You probably link sugar with obesity, being overweight, too much sugar consumption, obesity, or tooth decay, cavities, those kind of things. But what if I said you can definitely connect sugar, glucose, to heart disease? And most of us, I myself, included, initially thought, well, heart disease has to do with fat, it has to do with salt, those kind of things. And that's definitely not true. There's definitely a correlation with sugar. And the American Heart Association actually has recommendations for sugar in Americans. Cognitive decline, Alzheimer's disease, which, definitely hits home for me. They're calling Alzheimer's disease diabetes 3. There's definitely a link with sugar, inflammation, and cognitive decline. Um, Aging, wrinkling, aging, cancers, certain cancers, there's been a link shown to high levels of sugar, depression, mental health issues linked to high levels, too much sugar consumption in our society. So, to give you some perspective on sugar, the American Heart Association recommends no more than 25 grams of sugar a day for adults. It's about 6 teaspoons of sugar a day. To put that into perspective of what that means, Tim Hortons, a popular coffee place around here, double double, we used to order them, not necessarily every day, but a medium double double has 18 grams of sugar, and a large has 24 grams of sugar. My son's Pepsi, cherry Pepsi, total sugars for a 12-ounce serving, 42 grams of sugar in a 12-ounce serving. And think about those single serve bottles, they're like 20-ounce bottles. Think about how many grams of sugar. Again, the daily recommended allowance is no more than 25 grams of sugar a day. Cereal, again, my son, I'll keep blaming him. His cereal, grams of sugar. So these products, and I encourage you to look around, barbecue sauce, 17 grams of total sugar, 16 grams of added sugars. Really, look at your products and look at how much sugar you're consuming. I think you might be surprised. I had talked previously about how I've gone to drinking all black coffee in the morning and never thought I could. I always used a creamer, a flavored creamer, with sweetener in it, flavoring in it, and definitely, I think it's for the better, but I encourage you to start by being aware of the sugars in your foods. And you might think, okay, why is sugar so bad? Yes, okay, obesity or weight gain, but there's definitely a lot more to it because we can link this to all those diseases, heart disease. Well, it has a lot to do with what it does inside your body as it's digested. And really, when we eat our foods, what we eat, what we consume can either contribute to a stress response in our body or lower the stress response in our body. And stress is another whole factor that is very negatively affects our well-being. But did you know that what and how you eat can add more stress or decrease stress in your body? And unfortunately, sugar is one of those things that causes more stress within our body. And that stress response is, back into our initial days of humans, is that fight or flight response, where it raises cortisol and different hormone levels, that fight or flight response. And when we're constantly in that stress response, other functions are not going on, like digestion doesn't happen as well if we're in the stress response. And it does, raise your heart rate and some other things. So we want to not be in the stress response, but sugar, having too much sugar or having not enough sugar definitely puts our body in the state of stress. And what we tend to get on is what's called the blood sugar roller coaster. Because when you have something with sugar And it's not just these products, the sugary, the sweet products, the cereal and the pop, but that does include the simple carbs. So simple carbohydrates like white bread, like crackers, pretzels, all those simple carbs, they're called simple because they break down very easily, and they break down into sugar or glucose. Glucose, the most common, scientific name for sugar. And it puts us on this roller coaster because you eat something that has sugar and your glucose levels spike, and then your glucose levels drop. And then when your glucose levels are low, what happens? You crave more sugar. So you want another sugary, drink, another sugary treat. You feel like you need more sugar to give you that energy. And then it's constant throughout the day. And this is especially dangerous if we start our day with all this sugar. And what I've noticed in our American diet is that between our coffee, cereal, bagels, toast with jelly, like all of these things, we're just consuming way too much sugar, especially earlier in the day, because we're just setting ourselves up for this blood sugar roller coaster throughout the day. What happens in this blood sugar roller coaster, a little bit of the science behind it, is that you get this glucose into your bloodstream. And what that does is it triggers insulin to be released by your pancreas. Now, what insulin does is that insulin helps your cells, it kind of opens up your cells, has your cells open up to absorb or take in that glucose to be used for energy. Cellular respiration, middle school science. But glucose is used for energy by our cells in the mitochondria. And insulin, when it detects that there's levels of sugar in the bloodstream, insulin is released, and it kind of triggers your cells to use that. If you're eating too much sugar, it can't all be used by cells, and it does start to get stored. What we're seeing in so many Americans especially is insulin resistance, meaning that you are putting all this glucose in your body, insulin's being released, but your body's not really listening to the insulin. It's not having your cells use that glucose, so that glucose is stuck in your bloodstream. So your body releases more insulin, and again, your body's resistant to that insulin. It's not listening to that insulin and the message the insulin's carrying. And so the glucose is staying in your blood, starts to be stored as fat. This definitely is linked to weight gain. So insulin resistance is a major problem that leads to prediabetes and diabetes. So it's definitely a problem, this insulin resistance, and putting your body through this constant state of, I need more insulin, and then my sugar drops and I eat more sugary products. So if you can look for sugar and try to reduce sugar in your world, you'll be much better off for it. Is it hard? Absolutely. It's definitely hard. There are some things you can do, which we'll talk about. The tricky thing about sugar, though, is that it goes by so many different names. Like if you're looking at ingredients, it goes by so many different names, like 75 different names, like glucose, sucrose, dextrose. There's lactose, which is in milk. There's sugar and dairy products. Fructose is in your fruits. It's still a form of sugar. One of the more dangerous ones, high fructose corn syrup, and my son's favorite barbecue sauce, Sweet Baby Ray's. Number one ingredient, high fructose corn syrup, which is just, it's one of the worst sugars for you. I read a book a few years ago called The Omnivore's Dilemma, and kind of the theme of the book was everything is corn, and corn is subsidized by the government. And this is coming from the high fructose corn syrup is really coming as a byproduct of corn. Not good. This book made me question the food industry, and it really is an industry that is there for profit. The food industry is not there for our health, for our well-being as Americans. So I challenge you to really think about what you're consuming, what you're eating, and I need to think more of what I'm letting my son eat. But yeah, that food industry, it has many, many, many lobbyists that are, influencing the powers that be into giving us, these products that aren't great for us. And there's so many other things besides the sugars. But anyways, so what can you do? What can you do? We become truly addicted to sugar in our world. Number one is awareness, being more aware. If you're that double person, maybe you go down to single, because as I read, a double doesn't mean 2 teaspoons of sugar. It's way more than that. It's, these shots of sugar essentially. So maybe you cut back on that. Or cold turkey, black coffee. You may hate it for a while, but it will grow on you. And that can be a great way to start your day. So just kind of be conscious, especially early in the morning. It's really recommended that you start your day, with protein. See, the thing about proteins and fats are good to eat along with your carbs and your sugars. Sugar as a standalone gets digested so quickly that it does cause that roller coaster. But if you eat your sugars, if you eat your carbohydrates with proteins and fats, and eat those proteins and fats first, even in the meal, or along with it. I know it's hard sometimes to eat it at different timings, but the sugar or the proteins and fats will help line your stomach, your digestive system, and so the sugar isn't as absorbed out of your system as quickly. It is definitely a better practice if you're going to have those carbohydrates, those sugary things, to do it like after you've eaten proteins, and fats definitely are better to do it that way. In terms of fruits, including some fats along with those fruits is ideal. Fruits do have a lot of sugar, and a serving for a banana, for example, is typically half a banana if you're looking at suggested servings. And we'll eat a whole banana and not think twice about it because we're brought up to think that fruits are healthy for you. A way to combat that a little bit is to have that a healthy fat with those fruits, like maybe some sugar-free peanut butter with that banana. And really look out there in terms of your sweet tooth. There are a lot of really good peanut butters that can help with that sweet tooth, that just are sugar, or not sugar, peanuts, salt, and a little oil. Look for those products. I know there's some locally made peanut butters that can be good for you for that sweet tooth. um, Berries, blueberries has been my go-to. Blueberries are great for many reasons. They're great in terms of being an antioxidant. But having a container of blueberries, and when you have that sweet tooth, after you eat in the evenings, a handful of blueberries is a way to go. Drinking more water, just in general, if you can drink more water in your day, you will consume less of those sugary drinks. And the sugary drinks tend to be one of the biggest culprits of sugar that is really unnecessary. These sugary drinks really have no nutritional value. The sugary cereals really are dessert. You need to almost look at those things as dessert and try to incorporate more proteins, more fats into your diet. Really become aware of the sugar you're taking in. For yourself right now, for weight loss and all those immediate reasons, but really long term, especially if you have certain diseases that run in your family, why not try to curb any of um, those diseases that can enter your world later on. So my suggestion again is all that sugar isn't so sweet. So be aware and try to cut back on all that sugar that you may be consuming. This is Michelle Burney for Uncover Your Radiance Within.